Hey gang, and happy Halloween! Amidst the spoilers of Commander 2016, I thought it might be fun to do a top 5 list of suggestions for each of these commanders. Please note, I'm making up the pronunciations as I go, as there has been no official pronunciation guide released yet. The first commander I want to talk about is Atraxa, Praetor's Voice. With 4 key words and 1 triggered ability, Atraxa was the first general that they spoiled, and rightly so. She's exciting, she's flavorful, and she's kind of broad enough to be able to make your deck how you want it. I should probably preface this by saying that I'm not just going to limit myself to saying 5 cards, but in fact, I might include some mechanics or some cards. The first idea that I would run for Atraxa is Proliferate. As you can already read in her ability, she does a good job of this, so why not go further? All you have to do is connect once with an infect creature, and for every turn that Atraxa is out, your opponents come that much closer to losing. She also works really well with planeswalkers, and obviously so, you're able to tick them up regardless of using their ability, whether it's for a plus or a minus. Atraxa also loves evolved creatures. Gyre Sage and Fathom Mage are able to draw you cards and ramp you crazy amounts of mana for the longer that they're out. Similarly, based on the original Ravnica, Graft is an interesting mechanic. My personal vote for inclusion would be for Cytoplast Manipulator. Being able to constantly refuel her +1/+1 counters fuels her ability to steal creatures, which in turn is awesome. Next, let's look at Saskia the Unyielding. I think the most disappointing element of this commander, especially considering she's supposed to be a combat commander, is that she doesn't grant haste. I like her mechanic. Coming in, choosing a player, and then them taking the damage as well is a really fun idea. It allows aggro decks to be able to effectively kill 2 players at the same time, leaving only 1 remaining presumably, which means you're less likely to run out of steam before having to kill the final player. The first mechanic that I'd run for Saskia is Haste. We're running an aggro deck or a combat-based deck. We want our creatures attacking the turn they come out. Having to wait a whole turn around the table pretty much means that we're gambling with the chance that someone's going to have a board wipe. Second, I would prioritize Double Strike. In a 1v1 game, this means that your creatures are going to hit with Double Strike first, deal the damage, it'll trigger, then hit again and trigger again, dealing 4 times their damage. I like that number. The next mechanic that I would strongly consider running with Saskia is the Blink mechanic. Saskia can already make her creatures very difficult to block since we don't have to attack that player, but being able to do this in the combat step and change things last minute can be really backbreaking against an opponent. It also helps being able to rearrange who she's targeting with her ability without having to have her die. You can also run a lot of anthems. Green and white both have some generic anthems that give all of our creatures +1/+1. Couple that with red's ability to give creatures fire breathing means that even the smallest creatures can smash in for huge damage. Which leads us to our final point. Tokens. Creatures are easy to remove, but being able to have a reliable source of token generation can fix a lot of problems that aggro decks will have when they run out of steam. Having a reliable thing like Ophiomancer, Ant Queen, or any other reusable token generating card can quickly allow us to rebuild our army after being wiped. Next up we have Brea, Aetherium Shaper. I think she's probably the most focused of all the commanders. Her activated ability is focused so much on artifacts that you really can't help but build around that kind of theme. She's narrow, but I think it's safe to say she'll be one of the most popular out of the 5. As she is more focused, I think her suggestions are also going to be. My number 1 recommendation? Run a lot of artifacts. Creatures, lands, equipment. Just having 2 on the field can threaten a creature, punish someone with a lightning bolt to the face, or save you from lethal damage by gaining you 5 life. Next up, I'd probably say Enlightened Tutors and auto-include. 1 white mana for an instant speed artifact search to the top of your library is always going to be relevant to an EDH deck. Open the Vault type effects, which allow us to take all of the artifacts from our graveyard and put them onto the field, may very well act as a one-sided living death, and that's really not a bad thing. Lastly, the final card that I would strongly recommend is Karar Clan Ironworks. Being able to sacrifice your general, the creatures she makes, and chances are about 90% of your deck to generate 2 mana is always a plus. This one artifact will allow you to feed almost any X spell to a near lethal amount. Next up is Kaineos and Tiro of Meletis. This 4-color commander pretty much lends himself perfectly to a group hug mentality, and as a result, they're probably going to be the heads of a lot of group hug decks. It should come as no surprise to anyone that my top suggestions for them are probably group hug related. At least, that's what I was going to let you think, but instead, we're going to go a different way. If you've seen my primer, you know that I run my Zedruu deck as a bit of a control deck, so we're going to pretend to build them as if they were that. To this end, we're going to want to run a lot of cards that'll basically give opponents resources, but at the same time punish them. Fevered Visions is one such card, giving our opponents draw, but still punishing them for having extra cards in their hand. Similarly, taking a page out of Nekasar, Molten Psyche can punish a lot of opponents for drawing a lot of cards. I like how their effect isn't always symmetrical, since we will always get a card and possibly a land and an additional card, whereas our opponents will only get a land and a card. We can always punish those opponents for ramping a little bit faster than us by blowing up all their lands with Armageddon. And since we're causing our opponents to draw so many cards, they're probably going to have to discard them. So, rather than let them have access to them in the graveyards, let's run Rest in Peace and punish them. Kaineos and Tyro of Meletis might be benevolent rulers once they've conquered the lands, but they still need to crush their enemies before they can get to that point. And last but not least, we have Drous, Maelstrom, Wielder. If Brea is going to probably be the most popular commander, then Drous is probably a close second. I've seen a lot of people compare this wizard to the second coming of Narset. This isn't very fair. I think Drous can actually potentially be a stronger commander, but that's something for the comments. Anyway, let's look at some cards and mechanics that will make Drous that much better. First up is Strionic Resonator, because only getting to cascade once for a spell isn't enough. Next, I would strongly recommend using Double Strike, because again, being able to hit twice means that you get to stack the cascades. For every time you hit a player, your spells will cascade that many more times. As a result, it's not that far of a leap to see that extra combat steps are going to be very, very strong in Drous. Speaking of cascade, Maelstrom Wanderer can probably fit into this deck quite nicely, being able to cascade twice without you just having to hit once. Lastly, you're probably going to want to make sure you have a good curve. Cascading 6 or 7 times off of one spell is going to be fun and all, but you need to have enough spells that cost less than the spell you're resolving in order to maximize on the benefits. Like any deck that runs a Birthing Pod, this is probably going to result in several additions and removals until finally finding that right spot for your deck. Or, I mean, you could just jam a bunch of 9-cost spells in and hope you can cast them. That works too. Anyway gang, that's my take on the new commanders. I might do a follow-up video later on that has to do with the partners, but we'll see how it goes. Did you guys agree? Did you guys disagree? What cards stood out to you as soon as you saw these commanders spoiled? I would love to know, so please let me know in the comments below. Don't forget, new videos go up every Monday, and as always, thank you for watching, and please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more.